Turn the live chat on. Wait for people to roll in. I had a hard day yesterday, so I'm gonna make tea first. So I ordered a sample pack from this Me Leaf company. They've had good teas in the past, and this one is called Sweet Dew. It is a historic green tea produced for 2,000 years. First pluck of the year from 55-year-old tea trees. It's supposed to taste like orchid, orange blossom, and edamame with a sweet finish. We'll see. I'm excited, but I think you might be no. Well, you're the first to comment. Yeah. So I'm gonna try this sample pack here. I suggest ordering sample packs. Sometimes like this is a 20-gram sample pack. Sometimes you can get it down to just a couple grams. That way you don't end up with a ton of tea that you don't like. But this one had a really nice description, so I'm going to give her a try. And it's like they have very specific brewing instructions, but I'm gonna wing it. I'm gonna use a temp and the time, but as far as the amount that I'm putting into my little pot here, a little pinch more. We'll find out if I overdid it. Sometimes if you end up not liking a tea that you're brewing, like from a true tea plant, it can be that you put too much in your pot, you didn't put enough, the water was too hot, the steep time was too long. So if you don't like a tea the first time you have it, start playing around with how you brew it. So we're gonna fuck around and find out. Yesterday was rough. We took our little Charlie dog to the vet because he had been getting worse, and he was supposed to have surgery tomorrow, but I was like, he's not going to have the stamina to have surgery, right? And so we took him back to the vet, and his pancreas was failing, and so at that point, we had to put him down. And so I'm not trying to look, I'm like all smiley about it, but no, I'm just trying to like cope with it, and not let myself completely fall apart like I did when his mother Sally passed away, because that just like wrecked me like physically and emotionally and like financially, because I wasn't working. And so I'm trying to like, I don't know, grieve but not like die myself, if that makes sense. And then this morning, because when it rains it fucking pours, our cat Mister, who he's the best like cat in the world, he acts more like a dog than he does a cat, and there's something wrong with his back all of a sudden. If you touch him there, he screams, and it's like in his lower back and it's swollen. So off to the emergency vet we go. That's where my husband's at right now. And I'm like, what's the third thing? Right, this is two rough things at once. I'm waiting for the third thing to happen. So it's just been a morning and a day, and I'm like, okay. So assuming, I'm hopeful that with Mister, it's just a pulled muscle on his back, because he's been playing with the puppy, like willfully on his own. He goes and like presents himself to the puppy to like be played. He's very much so like a dog more than he is a cat, and so I'm hopeful that he just like pulled a muscle or something, but it's just been it's just been a day and a morning and a week and a month. And so today I'm going to try to repot those little tomato seedlings. And there's Lula howling in the background. She's got a titch of the separation anxiety when me or my husband isn't around, and so we're working on fixing that, because you do not want a 200-pound dog that has separation anxiety, because you may or may not have a couch when you come home, or things like that. So and as hard as it sounds, working on that in part means that we can't respond when she acts that way, right? So many people don't realize, like, if your dog is like scared or like being aggressive or anything like that, if you like pet it and comfort it, which is like your human nature to do, you're actually like training them to act that way because you're like rewarding them, you know. And it's hard to be like, I'm just gonna ignore that puppy, but you have to so they don't get you know, rewarded for it. Now this was supposed to brew just a little bit under 3 minutes, so let's see. I don't smell much, but maybe my smeller's broken. We will find out. It opened up really nice. I don't think I've ever shown you guys that. Let's see if I can do it. So I'll probably brew this at least one more time today. And the leaves, like, let me show you. Get my hands to work. The leaves, you know, they look all like dry and curled up depending on how they're processing them, right? But they open up beautifully with the hot water, and those will probably continue to open. Some people do what they call like a washing, where they'll like basically run hot water over it until the leaves open, and then they'll brew their tea. You can if you want. I'm just you know, it's all right. Depends on how fancy you want to get. So let's see how she's nice and like bright yellow color. I can't try. That's the third thing. I try to tip the cup so you can see it. Yeah, you can see that color. They grade tea based on like smell, taste, but also like the color of the soup, right? Like if you make this and it's like a light tea, but it turns really dark, it's not super high quality, right? Ooh. Right off the bat, it tastes like, it reminded me of like a cucumber that has like a thicker skin on it. Right? That's nice. That's nice. I think I could probably, I think I'll experiment with like a lower temperature next time. This was like 180, 185 because it's like a, but I think I'd do like 170 maybe because you can pull out more of the theanine that way. Yep, that's nice. I saw somebody said they have a tooth infection. Yarrow's pretty good for that. Just make sure it's not an abscess, right? Tooth infection can kill you quick. Amoxicillin, if they're not out of it, is like one of the antibiotics that I'm never afraid to take. Yeah, that's nice. I like it. That was the sweet dew with the bag sticking out. It didn't take too long to get here either. I think it came from a different country, so it came from London actually. But yeah, they also give like detailed brewing instructions in all of their containers. So no one's paying me to say it. I ought to reach out. I'm like a big enough channel. People should probably pay me for saying that I like stuff, but I don't know. I feel sometimes that's really disingenuous because you wouldn't believe how many people do reach out to me wanting me to be like, oh, I'll give you this if you advertise my supplement for me or this or that. I'm like, nobody wants the fucking AG1 drink. Everybody's drinking that green drink that everyone gets paid to, you know, sponsor and stuff. And I'm just like, I don't know. Like, I want, like, you could pay me to talk about things that I do like, but, like, I don't want to fall into that trap where I have to talk about things that I'll never use, you know? So I'm just talking about things that I actually like. But the good news is because I'm talking about this in a video that I have to pay taxes on YouTube earning, this is a tax deduction for me. Right? So it's like, that came in my mind a while back. I'm like, holy shit, it's a tax deduction because I do actually, like, I pay taxes on a little bit of money that I make every month from my YouTube videos. I mean, I don't pay it every month, but, you know, once a year I have to pay for that because it's gained income, right? And I'm like, that means anything I buy for my videos is a fucking tax deduction. And that is fantastic for the tea addict in me. But that is really nice. I think it tastes more all I get is cucumber. Not in a bad way either, you know, like maybe if you hated cucumbers, but you might get a different flavor. I also just brushed my teeth like 10 minutes ago. you know, so that, and I mean, I use my mouth mud, so it's not super strong flavor, but anything can affect your like flavor profile. I tried what they call a ruby GABA oolong yesterday. Ooh, that was nice. And the really cool thing about the I'll probably have it tomorrow and talk about it more, but this ruby GABA cultivar they make, it has a huge amount of GABA in it, like GABA acid, like what your brain creates. And so I think that's really neat. Um, and it was very like sweet and nutty and smoky, and it's bright red, which is why they call it, ruby. But it was, it was a nice treat, for my brain after like hours of crying. And the hard part was with Charlie is we had to do it at the vet. They didn't have anybody free to come here to the house to do it, but I don't know. He was so out of it with pain that I think he knew we were there. And they have like a nice garden space, and it was beautiful out yesterday, so we were outside, not in like a little waiting room or anything like that. But yeah, that ruby GABA, I mean, it melted me. It did. Like, because I flooded my brain with GABA, and so I wouldn't do that when I had first come off of benzos. That would have hurt me a lot, but I handled it fine yesterday. But anyhow, I'm excited about that tea. I've got 3 others that I haven't tried. I probably should start doing unboxings where I talk about the teas that I've bought, right? I've got some more. I'm been leaning into like Taiwanese teas, but they just had that. I ordered some from their sample pack of like I want to try their like milky oolongs, but like real ones that don't have like milk solids added, right? But I ordered a sample pack from there like 3 days ago, but they just got hit with that devastating earthquake. So I'm not gonna send any sort of message being like, "Where's my package?" So I'm like, it might be a minute before that one shows up. So it's very you know, I'm like, oh man, I just ordered tea from there. But what a lot of people don't realize is that when it comes to like the world of tea, whether it's, white tea, green tea, black tea, oolong, all these different types of tea, there are all different types of countries that are producing these teas in all different types of ways. So you can get like Taiwanese, Chinese, Japanese. There's even some great ones coming out of India. There's all kinds of areas that you can explore a tea through. As Americans, until we really get into tea, when we think about green tea or black tea, we think about stuff that's sold in a bag, and that stuff in a bag is garbage. The tea bag stuff, it's all like dusty, bottom grade, horrible stuff. So if you think that you don't like green tea, it's likely that you don't like shitty green tea, right? Like I was never necessarily a fan of the flavor, and then the first time I like got a sample pack, I was like, my goodness, what is this? And now I have a whole cupboard full of all different teas in like 6 teapots. I've got like 3 in my cart that I haven't bought. I'm like, slow down. But I am enjoying this one, and I do think that I don't know. It's a nice, at least if I'm gonna sink money into something, at least it's bringing me health. Right, and a lot of these teas go a long way. And if you order a tea and you brew it all different types of temperatures, times, amount, and you still don't like the flavor of it, try it cold brew. There are some that I really don't care for as like a hot brew, but taste fantastic as a cold brew. And that's as easy as, putting your tea leaves in like a jar or a strainer or whatever, inside of a container, putting cold water in it and sitting it in your fridge overnight. It's really easy. And what's really great about that is it tends to take away all the bitterness because there's no heat involved. And because there's no heat involved, you tend to pull out more of the L-theanine, which is a calming amino acid, than you do the caffeine, right? But the cool thing about green tea in general, or white tea, which is just when they pick it sooner, it's the same plant. The cool thing is the L-theanine in it slows down how fast your liver can process the caffeine and how your body responds to it. So I can't drink coffee. I can't drink coffee. That shit would send me to the fucking hospital with a panic attack, right? But I can drink green tea or white tea or even some black teas or some aged pu'ers or things like that that have a fair amount of caffeine in them, and I actually end up feeling calmer. It's like a calm focus, right? Because the L-theanine is there balancing it out, and coffee doesn't have L-theanine in it. I also don't like coffee because it blocks the absorption of magnesium through your gut. And then so it's like you're pushing your adrenal, you're pushing your body with caffeine, and then you're becoming magnesium deficiency, which makes things like anxiety and insomnia even worse. And then you're like, better have some coffee because I'm tired. It's pretty insidious. Plus, a lot of coffee. Well, I mean, tea can be contaminated too, but a lot of coffee in general has mold on it. Like if you don't get like spore-free coffee, there's like heavy mold loads on most commercial coffee brands, and you don't really find that with higher quality teas because they're having to like cure it, dry it, ferment it, age it. There's so much of a hands-on process that, and they have to be in control of it, that mold just doesn't grow. Um, so it's been a really interesting way for me to build a relationship with caffeine because caffeine itself isn't horrendous for you in the way that it's pretty good at supporting like liver function in small amounts. It can support thyroid function, metabolic health, which is the same thing as thyroid function, but it's in little bits. Right. People in general, but especially Americans, have a tendency to overdo things, right? Where like a little bit of caffeine is awesome, so let's live off of it. And then it like kills us, right? Because I don't like the concept that the poison is in the dose that comes from like the holistic health situation because some stuff is just straight up poison no matter how small of an amount you take. I realize you can see my microphone in the camera there, Um, that's like being, oh, just a little bit of rat poison and we'll call it warfarin. It's still poison, right? It's still having an impact on your body. But things like caffeine aren't necessarily poison. It's just like if you build your way up super high, it can be harmful, but in small amounts, it's actually helpful. So I just think that term gets abused a lot, right? But yeah, I I don't know. I'm avoiding like the grief but there's no wrong way. And I know that I'll deal with it definitely, I am grateful that we got to bring him home because he's buried under an apple tree right out in my garden and so with Sally, she just disappeared. We're pretty sure someone took her and then she died and um I don't I don't know where she's at. Right? Like I can't visit her. I don't feel safe like knowing like, um but I know where Charlie's at. And I know next year Charlie will be apples, and so that's helpful. Um so somebody said Google says valerian, hops, chamomile, passion flower, St. John's wort, magnolia, kava are all herbs that have been found to increase GABA levels. Um Most nervines, which means if you feel calm from an herb that you take, will increase GABA levels in some way or another. Some also increase dopamine. If you're coming off of benzos, it's a problem because the issue with benzos is that it causes basically the GABA acid to constantly like flood your brain. Like they stuck their foot in the door and it's constantly flooding out this GABA acid, which makes you feel better, numb, right? But your receptors that take on the GABA acid, they become like essentially calloused, right? Like they're used to taking in so much GABA that they are now like they've built all these new receptors, right? There's so much there constantly. And when you stop taking benzos, which by the way, you need to do that very, very slowly and very carefully and like have a plan in place and be ready for it to take a couple years to recover, you feel like you're going to die and you might die because what's happening now is since the door has shut and only a normal amount of GABA is coming out, there's all those receptors that aren't getting the GABA that they've been accustomed to, just normal amounts, and you go through horrendous withdrawal symptoms. But as you're healing, and ironically, the worse you feel, that means you're healing, right? That is literally a symptom of your GABA receptors healing. If you take something that increases your GABA, it will throw you back into whatever withdrawal symptoms you were going through. It will make them worse. It will, because you don't, it's like picking a scab, right? Like you're trying to heal a wound in your brain, and if you take something that increases GABA while you're coming off of benzos, it's gonna be fucking horrible. And so it took me 2 years to come off safely and slowly, and it was the worst thing I've ever done in my fucking life. Especially when like you don't have a craving for this medication, you just don't have a choice but to take it, because the symptoms are so horrendous. But then once you jump off, once you finally are low enough that you can jump off, it takes another 1.5 to 2 years before you can start fucking around with Nervines, and it really depends on the body, you know. But yeah, it is a hell of a thing, and that might not even have been why that comment was there, but now you learned something. But yeah, I like this tea. It's nice. It's a little dry in my mouth, tannins, but I think I could probably stop that by lowering the temperature and maybe lowering the time that it brews. But yeah, what teas and herbs did you use to help wean off of Xanax? Nothing. I was on Klonopin, by the way, which is like the strongest you can get. Like it took me a year just to wean down in tiny amounts to what like one of the Klonopin pills that I took was the equivalent of like 6 Xanax. Right, so it took a long time to wean down, but the thing that you're going to learn about coming off of benzos is that there's no way out except through it. And I searched for a long time. I was trying to find a fix, right? But the fix was accepting my reality. The fix was accepting my limitations, learning how to say no, facing my trauma, facing my own bullshit, and the things that, like, you know, had me swallowing that pill to feel normal, which is exactly what the doctor told me, you know, years ago. She was like, oh, you don't know what it's like to feel normal anymore, so you need to take this pill. And that is not normal. You know, that was a very, very, very long time ago. I jumped off successfully after a long taper almost 6 years ago now. At least 6, maybe 7. But yeah, you can also, I don't know, there's some people that talk about Amanita mushroom helping coming off of benzos. There's the lady Amanita Dreamer, like she was going to unalive herself after coming off of, in the process of coming off of benzos, and she was on a walk, and like the land does, a mushroom caught her attention, and it happened to be an Amanita, and she looked into it, and I want to believe she took a heroic dose, right? And it helped her a lot. But I don't have any experience with that in regards to coming off of benzos, and I didn't know about it before. But you know, I think it could probably be hit or miss depending on what's happening in your brain. But the fun thing about an Amanita is that she's not illegal in the United States whatsoever. There's only one state, Tennessee, that says you're only allowed to have it for decorative purposes. Everywhere else, it's a completely legal hallucinogen, you know. But Amanita mushroom is spelled just how you spelled it, Amanita. Amanita. I don't know, I'm fucking dysgraphic, so I probably spelled it backwards. But it looks like the Santa Claus Christmas time mushroom, the big red mushroom with the white dots. Don't just use that to go identify it. But I mean, you can buy it online because, you know. But I want to say Amanita Dreamer has a website where she suggests companies that she finds trustworthy, right? So. But yeah, that is one thing that I've heard people talk about. I went through it raw dog style. I did it real and hard and fast, and for me personally, I wouldn't do it any other way. I wouldn't go back and redo it, is what I mean. Because it did help me face a lot about myself and my situation and like my marriage and my everything. Like I burnt everything to the fucking ground, including myself, and it's the only reason that I'm here with you today. It's the only reason that I started posting on Instagram, which is how all this started. It's the only reason that I started making YouTube videos, that I started talking about anything that I would not be here today if I had not gone through that, you know? And so, but also just so people know when they're coming off of it, a lot of the symptoms, ironically, that I was using benzos for were caused by benzos. You can open up your pamphlet. The long-term side effects are anxiety, agoraphobia, social anxiety, all kinds of issues. You're not really supposed to take them for more than 48 hours in a row, but doctors were like, here, here, here. It's an epidemic. And it's even, I believe, the reason why a lot of people are dying more from opioid addictions. Now, I know fentanyl is a whole nother beast. But beyond that, like when you take a benzo and then you drink or you do any other drug, it magnifies it. And addicts have also learned that too, and so it's real easy to get a benzo prescribed. It's fucking crazy. It's something like I haven't looked at the statistics in a while, but the last time I did, which admittedly was like 4 or 5 years ago before 2020 hit, so it's probably higher now, it was something like fucking 45 to 55% of the population were prescribed a benzo, and like 75% had like tried a benzo. And I bet those numbers are higher since 2020 hit. I guarantee it. So people talk about it, but they get real defensive if they hear it because they're like, this makes me feel better. I'm like, well, dependency does that. But it's crazy. It's crazy shit, and I get to talk about it because I was on them for a decade to feel normal. That lady never, I went to her, she was like a psychologist. Never once, like, talked to me about my trauma or helped me through stuff. Just, you mean benzos? Here's some benzos, right? And I remember the saddest part is at that point in my life, I hated pills already, and so I had that bottle. I had that bottle for like 3 months before I was like, I remember the day. I remember the day that I was sitting there in the chair and my daughter was like a year old, right, at best. And I remember thinking, okay, I can't handle this anxiety anymore. I just need to feel normal again. And I took that first pill. And it was a fucking shit show from there on out because it shut down my neurodiverse brain, which I didn't know about at the time, right? Like, but anything that like stops somebody who's neurodivergent in any way from like thinking or dealing or anything like that, it's dangerous. And so like my life for the next decade would be benzos and like a huge amount of them, so it was just like I held off for a long time and I wish I would have listened to myself, but then again, I don't know, guess I had to go through it, made me who I am. But yeah, if I don't know what she is just so upset this morning. If I don't know, if you haven't taken them yet and somebody offers them to you, find a different way. Find a different way. I tell like if I ever go to like the hospital, which is very seldom, and they're like, "What are you allergic to?" I'm like, "Benzodiazepines." They're like, "What happens?" I'm like, "I break out in a rash all over my body." Right? Because I don't even, because how fast they'll push it. They'll push it on you, especially as women. They're like, "You're being hysterical. Take a benzo." Right? Raise your hand if you've been that woman in the emergency room. I remember when I tripped downhill, and some of you who follow me on Instagram might remember this. I tripped downhill over the shortest, like 1 foot tall fence in the world, and I landed on right here on a pile of metal fencing posts called T-posts, and I blacked out. I had a serious concussion, and when I was at the hospital, the doctor was more concerned. I was like, "Can you please like give me a scan, like see if I've," because I hit on my temple. It's a really soft part of your of your head. I'm like, "Can you please give me a scan? There's something wrong. I can't." And he's like, "Well, you're just emotional." And I'm like, "Something wrong. Please scan. Check if there's a fucking brain bleed, my guy. It's your job." You know what I mean? And he was more concerned about a theoretical fetus that might be in me than anything else. And he goes, "Well, are you pregnant?" I'm like, I don't know. I could barely communicate because I had like a bad concussion. And he was like, you don't know? And I'm like, I barely know my name. And then because I had no filter, I was like, well, even if I am, it doesn't matter because I would not have the baby, which, by the way, there was no baby, right? Like, and he was just utterly disgusted by me. Like, I was the monster in that situation. And then, we get done with that, and he's like, you're fine, there's nothing going on there. And he kicks me out. But over the next week and a half to 2 weeks, I was having a hard time talking. I was having a hard time like functioning and understanding. Like it was getting worse, and so I called the hospital. And because a year before, my husband had gotten a really bad concussion, and I happened to remember that they sent him to a concussion clinic, like as a referral from the hospital when he had a concussion. And I'm like, what the fuck? And so I call and I'm like, why didn't I get a referral to the concussion clinic? And they're like, we don't give referrals. I'm like, but this concussion clinic is part of the hospital. Like it's in house. And so, like, once you get a concussion, you're supposed to be automatically referred to there. It took me talking to, like, the board supervisor of the emergency room and saying, I'm going to fucking sue that doctor and your department unless you give me a referral to the concussion clinic. And I don't like to be that person, but it was like I was losing words and motor function. I get there to this concussion clinic and I end up seeing this lady that like had just transferred down from Canada from like a very specific like concussion study program, and she was livid. She was like, you have a grade 3 concussion and you should have been in here the very next day. And it was made worse because when concussions first happen, you need to get treatment right away. Right, you need to get treatment right away to make it lessened. And so it took me about 6 months of like cognitive and physical therapy to come back to like somewhat normal, and I still have issues. I basically was like an inch away from having a traumatic brain injury, right? And that doctor was more concerned about telling me that I was a hysterical female and that there might be a baby inside of me than treating me at all. It was bad. And so yeah, I always tell him because I remember, and I brought that up. I swear to God, I brought that up for a reason because they came in with a medication, and I was like, "What's that?" And they're like, "It's to calm you down." I was like, "I told you I'm allergic to benzos." And they're like, "Oh well," and I'm like, "No, stop. I don't need to be calmed down. I need to be treated for a fucking concussion, right?" And so I just, it sucks being a female that goes to a hospital. And it's brutal. But anyhow, today's been an interesting tea time. It's been I'm a human dealing with human things and just all over the place, and my brain got stuck on benzos. To talk about that subject and teas and things like that. I really appreciate everybody here that just lets me be a human, and just lets me jabber as if, I don't know, we're having tea together in the morning. There's no script or anything like that, and I just, who knows what way anybody's brain is going to go at any given moment. If you would like to support my capacity to get tax deductions from buying teas and and being a human and like working through grief, however that looks, and just being here with you, consider becoming a member. You do get early access to videos if I happen to upload them during the week. I uploaded one just the other day about the wine cap mushroom planting in my garden. If you're a member and you haven't seen it, go check it out. If you can't afford to become a member, don't worry, that video will release on Sunday actually, because I'm still going to do the cayenne one on Saturday. And then if you don't want to become a member, you could also call something home from, and or at the same time, you could do both. You call something home from my apothecary. I make all kinds of things. I've got herbal supplements, I've got tooth powder, I've got deodorant, I've got all kinds of books and things to choose from. All of that supports my capacity to exist. It's exclusively what we do for a living. You can use the code TEATIME, TEATIME, to save 10%. It's a one-time code, but if you haven't used it yet, there's 10% off for you. Also, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, share, turn on notifications, and all that good stuff. Sharing is super helpful because it helps get my work out there, helps people realize that they're smart enough to learn herbalism simply too, and that, like, it tells the algorithm that I'm worthwhile and all that kind of stuff. So, thank you so much for hanging out, and I will see everybody tomorrow morning. Bye.